The SCD fleet has seen its fair share of cars over the last couple of years, and apart from our beloved GT3, it's mostly consisted of brand new models on lease. You've probably got the impression of late, though, that we're getting more and more of a hankering for the slightly older models, those that are more characterful and a little less susceptible to depreciation. So, with our two M140i's due back at XL Leasing, we decided to replace one of them with this. A 2010 BMW E92 M3 Competition. The car's from Alex at Tier 1 Automotive, who are fantastic from start to finish. And now it's here, it's time to head out into the Peak District and see what it's like. So here it is then, E92 M3 Competition package. I've actually wanted one of these for myself for quite a long time, so this has sort of scratched that itch for me. Yeah, let's see if it's lived up to what I expected from it. So the competition package gets you 10mm lower suspension, so it sits really nice. Revised settings for the electronic damper control, and revised settings for the traction control as well. So the MDM mode just works a little smoother than it did in the normal car. You also get these 19-inch CSL style wheels, which I just think look awesome. What hasn't changed from the normal car is the 4-litre naturally aspirated V8. Still 414 horsepower, all the way up at 8,300 RPM, but it didn't really need changing. It's a stonker of an engine, and they don't really make them like that anymore. I really like the spec of this particular car. On the outside, the metallic grey against the CSL wheels, it does sort of mimic that E46 CSL sort of look. It has some additional carbon bits which have been put on more recently, the M Performance carbon parts on the front bumper, the rear spoiler as well. Inside it has the Fox Red leather, which I think really breaks up all the grey and livens it up a lot. The dashboard is the stitched carbon effect leather, which I like as well. Now it has the DCT gearbox. You can get this with a 6-speed manual or the 7-speed double clutch. There's a lot of debate about that. I think a double clutch suits this sort of car because it's quite a Grand Tourer sort of thing with a big front engine V8. So, after wanting to get my hands on one of these for such a long time, how has it lived up to expectations? Well, first off, I can tell you it is a pretty special engine. You don't get the naturally aspirated V8 anymore. Of course, the M4 has gone to a twin turbocharged straight 6, and yeah, it's a much more effective engine in the M4. It pulls from anywhere. There's not really a lot low down, sort of, that's flat, yeah, it picks up, but there's not a great deal there. It's all at the top end, and it revs all the way to 8,500 RPM, so you do have to work it hard, but if you have a little listen, working it hard isn't exactly a chore. It's got quite a hard edge to the sound of it as well. It's not a traditional sort of grumbly V8. In fact, Dan the videographer said it sounds like a NASCAR. Gearbox, well, for me it works well. Like, this car's 9 years old now, but upshifts are crisp, downshifts as well. There's a tiny little delay from the paddles, but after that you can hear it really snaps the downshifts. It has 5 different settings to the gearbox, and when you turn traction control fully off, it unlocks the 6th setting as well. And there it is. In the most ferocious settings, it gives you quite a kick in the back on full throttle upshifts, and it gives it quite a lot of character, to be honest. It's not seamless like a lot of the DCTs of today. It gives you a nice little punch. God, listen to it. Now, I mentioned the gearbox having 6 settings. Quite a lot of other things have got settings as well. So the electronic damper control, that has 3 different modes, and you can go into the iDrive and configure the steering, power, so that basically sharpens up the throttle response. So really, for an older car, it has quite a lot of bits to fiddle with, and you might have seen recently we're not really into fiddly bits, so you just configure everything you want into the M button, get in the car, start it up, press M, and everything's ready to go. It's not a light car, it's over 1,600 kilos, but it deals with these roads really well. It doesn't take you much time to get confidence in it. It's really well balanced, and you can pull little slides in it and it's really controllable. Just pulls nice little angles out of corners. You always get the impression that it's rear wheel drive. The back just pushes around that little bit, but it's nothing wild and out of control. Dead impressed with the front end. Turning, again, for a car of 9 years old, the steering feels quite quick and sharp. It's got a big 4-litre V8 up front, but it turns in. It's got a little bit of lean to it, just like the latest M4s do, but it's supple. Even in the hardest setting, it soaks up the bumps of roads like this in the Peak District. It means you're not getting thrown around quite so much like you might in a sports car. And it means you can carry quite a lot of speed as well. Now, one thing that surprised me, because M cars are known for being a bit lively, he says, is the traction. Now, it's got Michelin Pilot Sport 4S, so they are a grippy tyre, and out of corners, second gear, flat. It just digs in, it goes. That's probably partially because of the lack of low down torque. There's not a great deal of torque punching you all at once like the M4. Any weak points? Yeah, the brakes. We knew about this before we bought the car. It's quite well documented that the brakes are the weak point of this car, quite often referred to as chocolate. And on this one, they're a little juddery when you start to press on as well, so they don't feel great. And that brings me on to mods. So the first thing we really want to do with this car is upgrade the brakes. Another thing, I feel like you sit quite high in this car. Every time I've got in it today, I've wanted to lower the seat. So maybe some nice bucket seats might help you sit a bit lower in it like a sports car. Just get more of a feel for what the car's doing underneath you. You wouldn't be able to fold them and get people in the back, but I'm not sure we'll ever put people in the back anyway. Now, noise. Sounds great. It's all coming from up there though. It's all the engine noise. The exhaust sounds nice, but the engine is louder than the exhaust, so we might have to rectify that at some point and make it sound a little naughtier with an exhaust as well. What we really want to do with it is turn it into a fast, capable road car for tackling roads like this, with the occasional bit of track use, but it's mostly going to be on roads, tearing apart bumpy B roads with supercars in its way. Just like the other naturally aspirated cars of 10 or so years ago we featured recently, it has character at all speeds. The M140i's we run would show it a clean pair of heels in a straight line unless you were right in its sweet spot. But the 140 is so effortless at any revs, it almost makes you lazy. You have to work the M3 hard to get the performance from it, and with that comes the reward of a screaming V8. We're really looking forward to getting out, using this car as intended and keeping you up to date with the little mods as we go along. The only thing left to do now is find out if it still holds its own with a pack of supercars in its mirrors.